On today's episode of the Broadway Shuffle, Texas Tech basketball gets humbled by the Aggies. Football heads to Memphis to take on Arkansas, and portal season is officially open. That and much more next on the Broadway Shuffle. Okay, episode 33 of the Broadway Shuffle. Welcome, shufflers, to the show, as Zyler likes to call them. We've got Conrad and Zyler. No Clayton tonight. He's got a cold, and apparently he's not able to talk or breathe without sneezing or coughing, so we're going to give him the day off. But we've got three of us here, and we've got a lot to get into. Unfortunately, we'll be discussing a loss by the basketball team to an old rival, Texas A&M. We'll get into that a little bit as well, and then also Texas Tech slated to take on Arkansas football in the Liberty Bowl, which is where we beat Mike Leach and Mississippi State a couple years. So back in a familiar bowl game, and then portal season is officially open, and we have lots of hot stove rumors to get into there as well. So Conrad, Zyler, tough loss for the Red Raiders on Sunday afternoon. Conrad, you were there. Looked pretty energetic on TV. Why don't you go through what the vibe was like there in Dickies Arena and your thoughts on the outcome of the game?
Yeah, I had never been in Dickies Arena before, driven past it numerous times living in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But going in there, I was extremely impressed in the quality of the facility. It was a sellout, and we probably had about 75% of the fan base or of the arena. I mean, it was loud. I mean, there were points of the game where they were showing Texas Tech fans on the screen and then Texas A&M fans on the screen. And when Tech fans were on, the whole stadium just cheered. And when the Aggies were on the screen, the whole stadium booed. So it was really funny to see kind of that. I mean, I know the Aggies are suffering right now after they lost to Texas, but it was a fun environment to be in. It was, obviously the game on the court was disappointing, obviously losing the way we did. We still had a chance there kind of at the end. But it was a fun game to be at. Wish the outcome would have been different. I think it would have absolutely been different if JT Toppin was on the floor, but then again, he wasn't, and so we did lose, but was impressed with the environment, the effort, and if we can get him back, I think this team can still be really special, but we definitely do have some things to work out here in the meantime.
Yeah, Zyler, I tend to not overreact to late November, early December basketball games. Basketball is such a sport about getting hot at the right time and getting your guys ready to go, especially in what will be the gauntlet of the Big 12. But it is a little frustrating to come off a loss to St. Joe's in New York and come off the A&M loss and, not really get some of these big opportunities to win a non-conference game. I know without Toppin, you're really shorthanded here. Federico and EY, did all they could, but just don't really have the skill set or ability to kind of match what you need there, what Toppin brings to the table. Thoughts on that, and any over concern on your team at this point, or are there maybe other issues we should be looking out for that you're noticing here 10 games in?
Yeah, so a couple things. Kind of my first take writ large is, your tournament seeding, if you are going to get into the tournament, is going to be determined now by how you play in the Big 12. You didn't really do yourself any favors. In fact, you probably hurt yourself in the non-con losing to St. Joe's. Your best wins will be Syracuse and DePaul, which I don't even know if those will be counted positively for you. You have that loss to St. Joe's and a loss to A&M that won't necessarily hurt your resume, but that was an opportunity to add something. As far as the team's concerned, man, you just really don't have an inside scoring threat without Toppin, which is frustrating. If Federico's not getting it up at the rim on an oop, he's just not a threat there. EY is still kind of getting back in shape, and you clearly saw that it stalled your offense, man. There was so many possessions where you were just kind of dribbling up at the top, not a lot of movement. You wanted to try to get it inside, but you clearly didn't trust Fed or Yalaho to kind of distribute out of there. They did some neat stuff with Darion getting in there. Once you get the double team, man, he's a great passer. We've got to do a better job of getting him isolated down low. I'm not super concerned about this team. I think your ceiling's probably lower than what I was hoping for at the beginning of the season, but you're still really well coached. You lost to, a good A&M team. This is not a slouch team. They were way bigger than you. They were way more athletic than you, way more physical. That's the way that Buzz kind of creates his teams, whether you like that or not. But yeah, a disappointing result, but you're missing a top 5 player in college basketball right now to only lose by 5. Not necessarily a terrible result.
Yeah, some things here that I notice on a positive end is Chance McMillan continues to elevate his game. His ability to create off the dribble has improved significantly, it looks like. And then KO, Conrad's favorite player, Kevin Overton. I mean, not really new. We knew this guy was athletic. We didn't really know what we were getting offensively in terms of skill set from him coming over from Drake, but he's looking the part, and to have that production off the bench, if he can continue that as you're getting healthy, it'll only help in Big 12 play. But, Christian Anderson didn't provide much. Elijah Hawkins, I don't really know what's going on there. It's been sort of a funky start to the year for him.
Yeah.
I think I was expecting a lot more of him than what we've seen so far. And so maybe he's just getting his feet, under him, and we'll get going here as Big 12 play starts. But the guard play was a little suspect for me in terms of what your point guard production looked like in this game. And then Darion Williams only got up 8 shots. And, you need him to be, especially without Toppin, you need him to be at least getting more sets for him and being more aggressive on the offensive end. But look, like you said, without Toppin, you lose by 5 against a ranked opponent. It's not going to hurt your resume in the long run. This was an opportunity to really build it, like you said, but just disappointing to lose to A&M, I think, here. You get this game. I think it was supposed to be in Lubbock originally, and then it moves to Fort Worth. And, you get the neutral site game, and just to come up shorthanded was extremely frustrating because these games mean more now just in terms of bragging rights and not having the rivalry on a regular basis. So, Conrad, were those Aggie fans, the ones you can't stand so much, what were they like in Dickey's Arena?
I, for the record, I think Aggie fans are nice people. I think they're much nicer than the Longhorn fans. Longhorn fans, how you doing? I know you listen to this podcast. Another loss for you guys against Georgia, but we'll leave that there. No, it was. It was
sucks
fun.
to be you
like
guys.
I said before. Yeah, sucks to be you guys. We're going to the Liberty Bowl. Get on our level.
Way to get the 5th seed, guys. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, we'll be there next year. Or they'll drop us out because we're Texas Tech. We'll talk about the committee a little bit later. It was interesting. Aggie fans are nice as always. They have this band. I know the A&M band is a huge deal. People love to watch the band at football games, and they have this band called the Hullabaloo Band. I guess it's like they're like elite of the elite band nerds are in the Hullabaloo Band or something like that. And so they travel to basketball games, I guess. I'm not really familiar with A&M traditions. So any Aggies in the comments there, let me know if I'm wrong, but they were playing the entire time, which was kind of annoying. But again, I guess that's what they do. But something that really stood out for me just on the stat sheet was looking at the turnover margin. I mean, we had 18 turnovers, 18, and they had 9. So that's a pretty, that's a big discrepancy between the two. They got 18 points off of turnovers. We had 9 points off turnovers. So that was interesting as well. And it was that when you do that against a team that, I don't think A&M's particularly talented in any way. Like they're not going to go win the SEC, but they're not a terrible team. But when you turn the ball over that much, it's just things are going to happen like that. And also people, maybe if you're thinking about, okay, well, sure, you were down Toppin, but you still almost won. It's like, I don't think people understand how much of an impact one player makes on a basketball court, because you miss one guy like Toppin and you're just not even going to be close to what you were with him. And so it's not that we're saying, oh, you didn't have Toppin, of course you lost. You still could have won that game. And I think you should have won that game if you played a little bit cleaner basketball. But at the same time, if you have a guy like JT getting the rebounds he gets, scoring almost at will down low, I think that game's going to look a lot different for you. And so not having him definitely hurt. I wish he would have played. But again, if he's not ready, it only makes sense for him not to roll out there today.
Yeah, well, one of the odder moments, or is just looking through the stat line, Elijah Hawkins with an extremely odd stat line for a 5'11" player. He led your team in blocks with 3, oddly enough. But yeah, 5 assists, 6 turnovers, 3 blocks, 1 foul. 7 points. Really, you're going to need a bit more if you're a starting point guard there, especially if Christian Anderson can't really get it going. I thought the physicality was a lot for him. And I get it, man. That A&M team is incredibly physical. I am maybe not on record here, but I am on record saying A&M is my least favorite team to watch in college basketball. It is one of the ugliest brands of basketball that you can play. It's essentially volleyball on the basketball court. They're going to chunk up shots, go crash the glass, try to go grab it, get fouled, get to the free throw line. It's just not a fun or appealing brand of basketball, but to their credit, they play it really well. They're like Houston Light, just without as much skill and not as well coached. I don't enjoy watching them. It's not fun. But Buzz found a way to get it done. They hit shots. Zurich Phelps, total chucker. I mean, that guy is the definition of just I'm going to get my shots. It doesn't matter if they're going in or not going in. I'm going to be shooting. And we've all played with guys like that, and that would drive me nuts if he was on my team, especially when you have a guy like Wade Taylor who can actually hit shots. Zurich Phelps taking pull-ups and deep threes would drive me insane.
I still play with guys like that, man. And pickup basketball, it's just the most infuriating thing now. When you're trying to just get a fun game of 5-on-5 and you've got dudes pulling it from 40 feet every possession. So, one thing that's interesting to me about this, where this team is now, is you don't have much time. In days you do. You've got 23 days until you play Central Florida in your first Big 12 game, but you only have 2 games. You get a week off before you play Oral Roberts on the 16th, and then I think you get Lamar. And so you're looking at 2 games in the next 3 weeks plus before you open Big 12 play. So not a lot of time to gel in terms of game experience for some of these guys like Christian Anderson and Federico Squared, and these guys to like really gel if you're going to be without Toppin for a significant amount of time. I'm certain he'll be back probably for the Oral Roberts game, and they're probably just being overly cautious with him at this point. But Big 12 plays right around the corner, man. That non-conference slate went fast, and the gauntlet is about to start. So definitely need to be ready to go come New Year's Eve.
Zyler, what do you think, looking at this team now compared to what we talked about before the season, and your ceiling and your floor and what you can be and what we expect you to be, and now after seeing a sample size, albeit small, of non-conference, what are your kind of thoughts? Have your expectations changed? I know we were talking about potentially 3, maybe 4 seed. Does that change for you based on what you've seen, or what do you think there?
Yeah, I think my expectation for this team going in, I said, 5 seed or worse was going to be kind of a disappointment in my mind. Right now, I'm thinking you're sitting right around 5 or 6 seed. That would be kind of my expectation. So not a ton has changed. I think I would have slotted you down a couple slots. The thing that's really going to hurt you now, though, with this team is the Big 12 has not performed well in the non-con. These wins are not going to mean as much. So when we start talking bracketology, that's something I love to follow. But strength of record is one of the big metrics, and you saw it a little bit with the CFP committee. That's one that you've always really excelled in because how valuable the Big 12 wins are. And it's not just that they're quad 1 wins, it's that you're beating a team on the road that's ranked 40th. And instead this year they're going to be 58 or something like that. And those wins just aren't going to move your metrics as much. So I don't think your opportunities to improve your resume are going to be as strong. The SEC is going to get a ton of teams in this year. They have absolutely crushed the non-con. It's the best start a conference has ever had in the Ken Palm era. So they're going to get 11, 12 teams in. And so those slots start getting eaten up, and that just pushes you down a little bit. Plus, you didn't really do anything for your resume in the non-con. That's kind of, I don't think you're going to compete in the Big 12. I don't think you can defend well enough to compete for a title here. I think Houston and Iowa State are clearly going to be the 2 teams, and maybe Cincinnati. But hopefully you're shooting for a top 6 finish. If I could take that right now, I think I would. I think that would safely lock you into the tournament. It's the areas that you've struggled. Kerwin is struggling in this new offense that we're running with Jeff Linder. I don't know if that's just personnel. It's just interesting. Kevin Overton has obviously been a big positive, better than I thought he would be. Your on-ball defense is significantly worse than I thought it was going to be, and it was an area of concern for me already. That's going to have to be something that gets shored up. There's some really good point guards in the Big 12 that may be able to take advantage of you. So glad we've got some more opportunities to do that. And I thought you did a better job today. Wade Taylor's a great on-ball player, and you handled him okay. Zurich Phelps, for all of his flaws, he can get to the rim, and I thought you're improving there. It's just not great. This is not going to be the 2019 or the 2022 defensive team. You're going to give up some runs. You're just going to have to find a way to match it offensively, and that's kind of where I see this team.
Yeah, man, it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of go through Big 12, because depth seems to be somewhat of a concern here. If you can't really go to, if you can't really trust your backups behind Toppin, if Anderson's not ready for the physicality yet of what the conference will be. But to your point, man, like Kansas drops to Mizzou, and you see a lot of these Big 12 teams are falling. Arizona's lost some games. Some teams, Houston has lost some games. And so the Big 12 is already kind of getting beat up a little bit. And we know this team is full. This conference is full of great teams, but still a little frustrating to see the SEC go off in basketball. Maybe they're just going to take out all their anger on only getting 3 teams in the playoff. We'll see what happens there. So, Z, before we get to football and transition to the bowl matchup with Arkansas, anything you wanted to share about a potential Discord or email you might be working on?
Yeah, if you're listening to this point, I trust that you are a dedicated listener of the Broadway Shuffle, so we do appreciate that. Our channel has grown a ton over the last couple of weeks, and we do thank you. We are looking at opening up a Discord for people to join and talk about the show, do some different things. If that's something you're interested in, we would love to see that in the comments. If only 2 people are interested, probably not go. Well, we'll probably still do it anyway, just because it'd be fun. But
We'll do
it'll
it,
be
yeah.
just us 4 and 2 other guys hanging out in there. But yeah. Also, we're thinking about opening up question lines. We maybe do that in Discord. We may do that in email. If you've got any preferences, I would love to hear those in the comments. Let us know kind of what you want to see. We want to make sure that this is interactive for you guys and that you can give your input. The comments have been a ton of fun. A lot of you have really neat and interesting things to say, and we've enjoyed that interaction probably a lot more than I initially planned. So be on the lookout for some of that stuff. And if you've got ideas, you've got recommendations, we'd love to hear that. And finally, just thank you guys for tuning in. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah, and make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and go check out some of our interviews as well. We've had on Robert Giovanetti, Avery Benson, CJ Baskerville, and we've got some more lined up for you guys here in the coming weeks and months that we're really excited for, that I think you will be as well, but we need your help. And so if you want to subscribe and get all content, and then you can follow along on Spotify or Apple if you're into that for podcasts as well too. So Conrad Mills, the good old Southwest Conference, is making a return in Memphis, December 27th. Texas Tech and Arkansas started back in the good old days of 1957 and played until 1991. Then we got them about 10 years ago in a home and home. They crushed you in Lubbock, and then you found a way with Pat to beat them in Fayetteville in 2015. What do you think of the bowl matchup? How excited are you? And who would you like to see get some good minutes in this game, I guess? Because we don't really know what the roster will look like in 3 weeks. You got anyone on the top of your mind you'd like to see, I don't know, maybe start at quarterback or anything like that?
Yeah, I'll address that last because I want to talk about the matchup first. I will say I'm the AutoZone Liberty Bowl in Memphis on December 27th. I'm not mad at the selection. I think it's a good bowl for you. We obviously played there, like was mentioned earlier in the episode. I'm happy it's Arkansas and not another SEC team. I'm happy that Baylor has to play LSU. I'm really happy we do not have to play LSU. I think Garrett Nussmeier and some of those receivers would absolutely torch us. Arkansas, though, is an interesting team because they finished towards the bottom to the middle of the SEC. They may have a little more size on paper than you do, but they're apparently going to be missing a lot of players as well. So the matchup could be a good one for you. I'm interested to see how many players that we had out at the end of the season, because we had numerous. I'm not going to bore our listeners with every single name because it was just so many. But the reality is we need those players back to compete to the level we want to. Taylor Green's a pretty mobile quarterback that Arkansas has, number 10. He transferred in from I believe it was a Mountain West school last year and came in. They had a decent year for them, kept them in some games, really had some spots against Tennessee that they won at home that was good for that program. So it's a good matchup for us. I love that we're playing somebody that's close to Texas. It was rumored for a long time that we were going to play Rutgers. Not that I wouldn't have liked the easy win that Rutgers would have given us, but there's no really there's no animosity there. There's no hate there. And I think there's maybe some old school Tech fans and old school Arkansas fans that remember those old Southwest Conference days that may have some disdain for each other. So I'm glad that we're renewing this, and it was always fun to play them. I know I've got a friend that I grew up with who went to Arkansas, and so I'm already looking forward to talking smack back and forth. He actually said today that we're going to win by 3 scores. And I said, no, man, you're going to win by 3 scores. And so when you're disagreeing with a fan from another team of how much is the opposing team going to win by, that shows that nobody knows what to expect. So, and talking about nobody knows what to expect, I mean, we don't know who's going to be healthy for this game, right? So, you've got some defensive linemen that may or may not play. You've got some guys going to the NFL. I would doubt that Taj is going to play in this game. Why would he? Doesn't benefit him. I will say that I do care about this game because I want to get to 9 wins. I think 9-4 on Joey's resume and our school history books looks a lot better than 8-5. So I do care tremendously about this game, but you want to make sure you're playing the right guys. So going to address Brennan's question earlier. He was obviously talking about Will Hammond, our stallion of a quarterback who's been waiting in the wings, who Brennan has a massive crush on, getting some minutes and potentially starting this game if Barron doesn't play for whatever reason. I'd love to see Will. I think Will would be great. I think if you gave him a lot of time to prepare, he'd do really well against this Arkansas team just because he's that kind of cerebral guy. He's got the talent. He's fast. He's a good passer of the football. So I think it'd be fun to see him. But again, guys,
keep talking.
In my opinion, I know it's music to your ears. But this is still Baron Morton's team. So if Baron Morton does play, I expect him to play well, just like he did last year, and help you to a win. But also, I really want to see. I am so excited. We've talked about this before. Seeing Jacoby Williams I'd like to see him, assuming Taj doesn't play. And I'm not sure Cam Dickey's been hurt. I don't know if he'll play in the bowl game, if he won't. But if he doesn't, I'd love to see Jacoby get, 15 carries, maybe 20-ish total touches in the game. If you get him, if you get him the ball 20 times, I think good things are going to happen. He's not a back like Taj that you're going to be able to hand the ball to 30 times a game. If you do that, he may leave the game on a stretcher. He's just not built like that, and neither are a lot of people. So Jacoby and Will would be two guys I'd like to see. I mean, maybe we'll see Micah Hudson. I don't know, guys. What do you think about seeing Micah Hudson play against the Razorbacks?
Even if I were to entertain that and he were to come back, I doubt he's suiting up. If he is, and we'll get into some portal rumors here in a second as well.
You think he'll wear a boot?
This he'll probably. I'm sure he'll stop faking his injury. This game, I'm excited. I mean, at least I think Conrad said it. Like, you could have been easily playing like a team like Rutgers or some lower tier Big Ten team in Phoenix on December 26th. You get at least somewhat of a renewed rivalry here. You had it when basketball with A&M, and you get it with Arkansas and football now this month. And that's just more fun for us. And I think there are some bragging rights there. Arkansas and Texas Tech do have a history, and I'm looking forward to the challenge. This team with Sam Pittman, I mean, they've been trying to find a way to fire him, and he's almost acknowledged that they've tried to find a way to fire him in the past. And if they were to lose this game, they'd fall under 500. You think we can get another coach fired, back-to-back games potentially, where you get Neil Brown and Sam Pittman, or are they safe now that they made a bowl game?
I think they're probably safe, especially with revenue sharing. I think, and for people that do bowl games, my kind of rule of thumb is that they don't matter unless we win, and then they're very predictive for next year. But I don't know that I'm going to take a ton from this game. There's so many things that are unknown, like the rosters. You may be down 25 guys or something like that. I mean, you're already down a lot of backup linemen and different things like that. And I'm sure they're going to have guys sit out for the draft, go to the portal, things like that. You could be looking at, if Barron doesn't play, you're down your starting quarterback, you're down your starting running back. I imagine Josh Kelly's not playing, he shouldn't play. As you're down all of those guys, like, man, your offense may look extremely different than what you saw in the regular season. So unless we blow them out, don't take anything from this game. But if we do perform really well, it does mean a lot. And it wasn't because Arkansas had players sitting out. It's because our team is really, really good. So other things that I'll be looking for, you've got a ton of guys at edge that need to turn into productive players. You've got 14 scholarship guys at that position. You need somebody to turn into a dude. Now, Spencer and Adedire obviously missed the season, so can't really fault them for that. But can guys like Harvey Dyson, can guys like Terrell Tillman, can you get something out of Eddie Smith? Do you see Chetta Ofili come on, the two true freshmen? Do you see something from Braylon Rigsby? I want to see a lot of those young guys kind of cement your spot. Make sure that we can count on you for next year. Let's get a good look at you. Let's get a ton of game reps, and I hope that they do. I don't imagine that DB Carroll is going to be playing. He'll probably try to be prepping for the draft. So you're going to be down, quite a few guys. This line is going to move all over the place as people announce that they're entering the portal or sitting out the game. So just keep an eye on that. There's no way to project what these rosters look like, I guess, 19 days out. The other thing that I'll say, this stadium is like halfway torn down. I think one of the sides is completely gone. It's like under complete renovation. So I think I have a picture of it somewhere. But yeah, that's going to be really interesting. The stadium's going to look extremely odd. I don't know if you guys can see this, but yeah, this is what the stadium looks like right now. So like half the stadium is going to be gone. I hope you're on the other end in case it's really cold. But yeah, super interesting stuff that you're going to be dealing with right now. So
yeah, well, what are they going to do? If you're not watching on YouTube or Spotify, essentially half of the stands are gone. What are they going to do with that? Just close that off completely? I mean, it looks like you can't even.
I have no idea.
Walk in that parking lot. That's going to be really interesting.
No idea. And Conrad, to your point, I don't know what they're going to do on the construction side, and maybe that's an outdated photo. But I woke up this morning thinking that you were going to play in the Armed Forces Bowl in Fort Worth the day after Christmas. And I am so happy that we are not doing that. That would have been just a nightmare. Those guys don't opt out. They all continue to play. They
Mm.
would have been very amped up. You're going to have all these guys out. Like, it would have been a disaster. I think you would have lost like 16-3. Nobody would have been happy. It would have been a disaster. I'm very thankful that this happened. And shout out to TCU for absolutely screwing themselves over. I think they turned down a couple bowl games and ended up in the New Mexico Bowl against Louisiana Lafayette. So well played there, Sonny Dykes and co. Excellent job.
Yeah,
And,
they're going to
one
win,
other
though.
note. Who cares? Nobody cares. There's nothing, like, nobody cares if you win and you get made fun of if you lose. So it's a lose-lose situation. The other thing, it is ridiculous that the SEC gets to decide which bowls they send their teams to. Every other conference, the bowl selects them. The SEC is the only conference that says, no, you don't get to pick our teams. We pick which teams go to which bowl games. So they get to kind of pick and choose their matchups and where they want to send teams. That's totally ridiculous. I don't know why they get that favor. It's really just another thing that really bothers me about the SEC. But
it just means more.
We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, it just means more for them. They get to pick and choose what they want, except the 11th seed in the playoff this year. One thing,
exactly
too,
right.
just for us to keep in mind, and we'll obviously have several episodes between now and the game, but, you beat Ole Miss. You looked good in the Texas Bowl a couple years ago, and what it did was almost create this expectation that the next season is going to be something magical, and even the media bought into that. And I think you were projected to finish 4th that year. And what do you do game 1 of that season? If you don't want to remember, you don't have to. I do, unfortunately. You lost to Wyoming. And so that's why I tried and
Never forget.
I never forget, right? I think I learned my lesson that season is you want to see and you want to win because you have the pride of the team, but you don't want to look at what this game means or could entail as a jumping board into next season with an expectation. Because even if some of these young guys look great, they might not be on the roster. They might not. There's still another transfer window that could happen, and you might be bringing some guys in through the portal that will be taking their spot. And so I would just temper expectations. Enjoy the fact you get at least a common opponent that you're somewhat familiar with over the course of your history, but don't set expectations that a big win here, or Jacoby Williams looking great here, Kelby Vaslin, or John Carlos Miller, just some guys that will be seeing some minutes. Hopefully they do look good and will be good producers for you, but don't set the expectation that, we just beat Arkansas 46-18 or whatever it could be. We're going to win the Big 12 next year. And I know there'll be some people that see that. So,
and conversely, if you get walloped, don't take that as, our team is going to be terrible next year. Like I said, it's only predictive if we look good. That's my rule of thumb. Then you can say, we're going to.
So you're the guy I'm talking to. Then you're the, oh gosh, we're going to win the Big 12. You're going to see us beat Arkansas.
Yeah, exactly.
And go, oh my gosh, we are going to the playoff next year.
Well, it's so hard.
If we lose, I'll be telling you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But do you remember Amir Washington last year? 3 sacks against Cal. We were like, dude, this guy's going to be an animal for us next year. And it's like, he's kind of just a jag this year.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing because as more time has passed since the transfer portal has been a thing, since NIL has been a thing, since you're close to revenue sharing starting next year. I mean, it just feels like even what you're going to see on December 27th is not like, it's just, even if you look good, it's probably not going to be indicative of your team next year, just because there are so many things that are going to change. You've obviously got all your recruits coming in. You've got guys leaving. There may be guys playing in this game that Joey and staff may have to say, hey, little Timmy, I'm sorry, you're not a bad player. There's just not a spot for you here. And so I don't know if that's what will actually happen for sure. Brennan obviously thought me saying Timmy was hilarious. Not sure why. Maybe he says, I don't know what they'll say. But it's interesting thinking too, because you also have guys that you may want to see here next year, and then they play the bowl game and then they decide to transfer. I mean, it's just so you cannot predict how these teams are going to look. You saw Arizona State win the Big 12 championship. I mean, how many transfers did they bring in? North of 40, north of 50 last year. I mean, it's just you're looking at a completely different era of college football. So I'm not saying bowls are completely meaningless. Again, you get a win or a loss for this game, but at the end of the day, they really don't mean a whole lot for your next season, even if you win. So those are my just initial closing thoughts on the bowl game. But that was something I was thinking about and talking to somebody about earlier today.
Poor little Timmy, man. I don't know why that cracked me
Yeah.
up so much. It just did.
Give him a spot. Don't eliminate the
yeah,
walk-ons.
come on, Joey. Let little Timmy play.
Yeah.
And then if you're gonna, also on the coaching side, you don't have your OC, you don't have your DC.
Yeah, you don't have either of your coordinators.
You have your new coordinators aren't coaching in this game. You've already lost players to the portal. You might keep some that have entered the portal, but it's going to be really interesting. The whole window, like what other sport? In the NFL, there's a free agency period. In MLB, NBA, there's a free agency period. In what period does the season still continue? And you say free agency's opened, but we still have a whole another month left of the season to play. It's just dumb. Like coaches, Joey's busy and crazy. He's got to prep for a bowl game. He's got to prep for the portal. He's got to add guys. He's got to analyze the roster. He's got to introduce new coordinators. Like it is college football. It just none of it makes a whole lot of sense now. And so, and we'll get into that right now. So, CFP committee, or no, sorry. I got too excited. Let's go to the portal first. Transfer portal window. Z, anyone in particular you're keeping your mind on that might be returning? Well, I guess we could start with a guy named Micah Hudson. There's some rumors that might be coming back, that the relationship might have been repaired. Have you heard anything on that end? And then any other guys that have transferred or might be entering the portal today and throughout the week that, you wouldn't be shocked to see if they entered?
Yeah, just so on the Micah Hudson thing, I just really wouldn't bank on him returning. Maybe he does. If he does come back, I'll be super excited. He's going to have some reconciliation that he has to do with, a lot of the players and a lot of the coaches. If he comes back, great. I'm already planning on him not being here. So if you decide to return Micah, great. If not, we'll be all right. Guys that I'm kind of monitoring, any of those, you already saw Demarion Crest Daniels enter. You took 3 receivers in that 23 class, and Kelby's the one that kind of broke through, but TJ was the other one that they kind of like. You never really heard anything about Demarion. So he entered the portal. You also saw Caden Carr, the local kid, also entered the portal. Ty Buchanan entered the portal. So your starting left tackle is going to be out. I think Dalton Merriman is planning on entering the portal, but so I don't even know who you're going to be rolling out at the left tackle. Things that I'm monitoring, though, I think you're going to see some churn just because you got to get down to 105 roster spots, and you currently roster about 120. So expect this to be. Don't panic when you see a lot of guys entering the portal. You just have to churn people. If you want to add 10 to 12 guys in the portal, you need to get rid of about 10 to 12 guys. The players that I want to keep are obviously solid contributors. So I think, guys like, golly, I completely forgot his name. Caleb Douglas. That's a guy that you're really going to want to keep. He'll be your most productive receiver returning next year. You're going to want to keep Sheridan Wilson. I want to keep a lot of the young O-linemen. I want to see Nick Fatigue stay here. I want to see Jacob Ponton, Ellis Davis, Dylan Shaw. Those guys are the future. Make sure that they're still here. It's really tricky for Joey and them in the portal, because if you recruit good offensive linemen out of the portal and they're here 2 years, does that encourage your younger guys to enter the portal? And then you have that problem again 2 years from now. So how do you balance winning now versus developing for the future? It's going to be really interesting. I would expect to see some churn at the defensive back position. You've got a lot of safeties on your roster. I think some of those guys are going to get pushed out. You need to keep your linebackers. You don't have a huge wealth of them. And then your defensive tackles, you need to keep Braylon Rigsby, Jaden Cofield, Morian Banks, the other gentleman. His name escapes me. There's another guy that slid inside that played a decent amount. But yeah, you have 4, and then you signed a 5th one. But you need to keep those guys. I expect you to add several of them in the future, though. It's going to be wild. Portal opens today. Expect to see a ton of stuff happening. Expect to see us have a ton of weekend visitors this week. You've already hosted a cornerback last week. You're going to host an offensive lineman here pretty soon. It's going to be chaotic, and it's going to move extremely quickly. You're going to hear, hey, Tech's interested in this guy. 48 hours, he may be committed. So keep your head on a swivel.
Are Adedire and Spencer returning next year? Is that the plan? Would you be surprised to see them enter the portal? You think they're going to come back?
I would expect them to come back. Things I've heard about Spencer, I don't even need to say him on here, but I would like to keep Spencer. I would like to keep Adedire. Those are your old edge guys. They need to prove it, though. This will be big years for them. This is going to be huge camps for them. Hopefully they can contribute, because they didn't play this year. There's young guys coming after them, and we can't roster every single person that we want to roster on this team. So
Yeah.
you either need to prove that you're worth the long-term potential, or you prove that you're worth it now, or we're going to have to make room. And that sucks for some of these guys that are probably going to end up being good players. I'd be looking for some mid-majors teams are going to get absolute steals out of the portal. They're going to get guys that deserve to be on Power 4, Power 5 rosters. And there's going to be some teams that add some legitimate talent. It's going to be a great time to be a program like Tulane or, Tulsa, North Texas, things like that. Guys that just got kind of bumped out of a roster spot, but that should probably be on rosters like Texas Tech or TCU or Baylor that are just kind of going to get churned. So it's going to be wild. Next couple weeks are going to be absolutely insane.
Yeah. Conrad, you were given a money sign there. Thoughts on you expect that the bank to be opened here in the next 3 weeks?
Well, I think your bank was open and the Brinks truck was backed up for your new OC in DC. So I don't know what those figures are that they're getting paid, but Texas Tech is not a slouch when it comes to money, and our donors have made it very clear that you're not going to lose people that you want to keep due to money. You're going to make it work. I just think when you're looking at some of those young offensive linemen, keeping them here, I mean, sadly to say, I mean, it's not about the education anymore. It's not about potential. It's not about being developed as a young man, as a future employee. I mean, those things are, if they're even considered, they're extremely far down the list. And really what matters are two things. Money, number one. I think money is first, and then playing time behind that. I think guys really do care about money first. And it's unfortunate because, the amount of money you're getting, maybe it's a couple $100,000. You're still going to have to work. A couple $100,000 is not enough to keep you afloat for that long. I mean, sure it can, but I think money is a big factor for these guys. So hopefully we can make sure they're compensated well, because regardless of what I think about it or not, or if it's right or wrong, not that I'm against guys making money. It's just when you're basing your decisions as a college kid off money, I think that's kind of short-sighted and maybe not necessarily the best way to think through things, although you got to do what you got to do, and we're not going to fault you for that. But at the same time, it's interesting thinking about Texas Tech and where we're positioned, because you did just go open the wallet for an OC and a DC. You did just open what I would argue is the nicest football facility in the country, in the Womble training facility. That they moved into that last night. There were a bunch of pictures on social media about that. And if I'm a recruit and I'm walking into there, and I'm seeing what they've got access to, the facilities that they do, the indoor, the new South End Zone, the best stadium in the country, all these different things, and now the nicest, training facility. I mean, it sells itself. I'm sure Joey's going to do his thing, walk guys through it with our new, with Coach Wood and Coach Leftwich, and it's just going to sell itself because it is something so big. I just think that money plays a big part, and I wonder how that conversation comes up. It's like, do you go through all this stuff? Do you meet with the position coach, the coordinator, the head coach, and then you sit down across the table and say, how much are you going to pay me? Like, how does that work? I mean, some of these kids have agents, but it's like, well, what's the dollar sign? What's the dollar figure for me? It's just the whole thing. As a professional athlete, I see how you get there because you have an agent, you're negotiating contracts, all that kind of stuff. But as a college kid, say you're 19 and you're that Alabama 5-star receiver, you enter the portal and you walk in and you sit across from, let's say, Joey McGuire, and you say, okay, what am I worth to you? Like, is that how, when does that come? When do you guys think that happens and takes place? Is it before you even get on the plane to visit a place, or how does that work in y'all's minds? Because I have no clue, and I don't know that any of us do. I'd be fascinated to know what that looks like.
Yeah, we'll have to have Joey on the show and have him tell us.
Yeah, there's really only one answer to that question.
And I think it's different. As a high school guy, I'd be way more concerned developmentally. Like, if you're paying me, oh, sweet, I get $25,000 a year to be here, that doesn't really change my mind on anything. It's because at that point, as a high schooler, everyone has visions of being an NFL player. We know that's not realistic for everybody, but that's what I'd be looking for, is more developmental stuff. Now, 5-star, probably chasing the back, you could get, some of these kids come from, maybe less than ideal situations, and like, you get $600,000-$700,000 over the course of 4 years. That's like life-changing money for you and your family. I don't blame a kid for doing that. But if I'm a portal guy on my last year, if I'm a 5th, 6th year senior, I know I'm not going to the NFL. I am chasing the absolute bag. I don't care about playing time. I'm going where I can get paid the most, and then I'll start my career. So that's kind of how I would view those things. But the trickier thing is you don't know what other teams are offering, because there's really no salary cap. Guy could be saying, hey, this team is offering me X amount. I need you to beat that. When in reality, he may not have an offer from that school for anything. But you kind of have to roll the dice or either trust the agents. But he's also representing his client.
Agents.
Why would he? Yeah. Why would you not believe that? So how do you kind of see through, and you're going to have your bluff called a couple times and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but very, very tricky to manage. I do not envy, James Blanchard, Brian Nance, those guys having to navigate and manage all of that for our personnel department.
So if you have a kid that walks in and says, hey, Baylor offered me $65,000. Would you, if y'all were a head coach, let's just say you're Joey McGuire and you say, and somebody says, Baylor offered me $65,000. Would you try and negotiate right there? Would you say, I need to see it in writing? How would you respond to that? If it's a kid you really want and you're like, okay, I can go get you $75,000 for this year. How do you look at that? What does that do for you? This is totally off topic, random. How do you handle this? But would you ask for it in writing? Would you say, I believe you? What do you think there?
I'm far too prideful. I would pay whatever it took to get him away from Baylor. So I'm probably not a bad person. I'm a bad person to ask.
Yeah, I'd say I would pretty much just give him, Conrad, your presentation of Lubbock versus Waco that you did for the the Baylor game about 2 months ago, and say, here's your options, buddy. You go ahead. Here's your $65K in Waco. See how that turns out for you. Then give them your fine presentation.
Yeah.
But to that point, it is interesting. Like I imagine that these guys, Joey and Blanchard and Kirby, and they'll sit down, and I guess Cody Campbell for that matter, and go through, here's what we can allocate to the NIL. Here's what we might want to pay for this position compared to this position. Maybe we want to pay 3 offensive linemen this amount of sum and pay, one tight end this or whatever, and I'm sure they've got their big board, but it's just, it's scary. It's a scary place to be in, but it's an exciting place to be in as well, because you can lose a lot and you can be like, oh man, like for instance, Caden Carr, Buchanan, we're like, oh man, offensive line, that struggled. But, these guys struggled. Like that needs an overhaul. It's needed an overhaul for a couple of years now. And so our, depth is only as good as the guy that can actually block in front of you. We've seen just adding guys in the portal, i.e. Porsche, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be productive for you. So it also comes to getting the right guy in. And so if that Baylor kid is like, Baylor's paying me 65, and you're like, okay, well, what if I can go get another dude for 40 or 50 that might fit the need more, or maybe you go get a guy for 130 that can that is just a guaranteed starter at a level. It's really interesting. It's frustrating, but it's also for the fan, at least, it's exciting. I would not want to be in that room unless they want us to interview them, and then by all means, like, send the Broadway Shuffle in for some exclusive content. I'm all there for that, but I don't want to make the decisions. So
if the Broadway Shuffle is ever included as part of an NIL package, just know that our team is going to absolute crap. Hopefully we're never involved in any of those conversations.
If they start trusting us, man, something went seriously wrong within the Texas Tech athletic program. Maybe not.
Listen,
though, man, we're here. We're here. We are pro Texas Tech.
Play little Timmy. That's
play little Timmy.
Saying we want little Timmy there. So, well, let's get into, as we close the show, the CFP committee. I think we'd be remiss if we did not at least discuss what transpired on Sunday afternoon with SMU kind of stealing that last spot after losing the ACC. Then thankfully, though, the Big 12 didn't have to have the embarrassment of being the 12 seed. Arizona State does get a bye, does not jump ahead of Boise, but nonetheless gets a bye. So, Z, I'll go to you first. Overall thoughts on the committee. You have been a staunch critic of Ward Manual in this whole process, but now that you've seen it and seen what decisions they made, any surprises on your end?
Yeah, I was actually shocked that Alabama didn't get in over SMU. I would have bet the mortgage that Alabama was going to get in over SMU. And I'm actually flipped. I think the committee got this one wrong. I thought truly the most atrocious decision that any committee has ever made in the history of sports was putting Alabama in over Florida State last year. That was unbelievably bad. We don't have to litigate that. I thought that Alabama deserved to get in over SMU. Now, I don't think it was as clear cut as some people like to say. Everybody likes to throw around strength of schedule. Just having a strong strength of schedule should not entitle you to a spot. If I played the number one strength of schedule and went 2-10, does that entitle me to a spot because I played the number one strength of schedule? Like, absolutely not. The better record that people need to be looking at is strength of record, and it's, determining how well you performed against said schedule. Alabama, the only reason that they were in a position as a 3-loss team to get in the playoff was because they did play a really tough schedule. Now, I think there's a really good chance that the ACC actually just sucks a lot this year. SMU ran through that conference pretty much unchallenged, and then got, really tested by Clemson, and then lost to Clemson. They got, beat by South Carolina and hammered by Georgia. So I think there's a chance SMU just may not be that good at all. But Alabama's strength of record was better than SMU's, especially after that loss. SMU didn't really do anything, and this is where I get really frustrated with the committee. They elevate teams higher than they should based on wins. The number of wins in the column. Well, this team only has 2 losses, so we've got to bump them up. They have 9 wins. They have 8 wins. They got to be here. That's just really bad process. They backed themselves into a corner. They did not want to give the perception that conference championships didn't matter. I thought Alabama was more deserving based on what they had accomplished in the regular season. And, they obviously didn't play in their conference championship game, but their overall body of work I thought was more impressive. Alabama has nobody to blame but themselves, though. Don't lose to OU as a 3-touchdown favorite, and you would have coasted in. I think you would have easily passed SMU. But still, I think the committee got it wrong. I thought Alabama deserved to be in over them, and I am a massive SEC hater. Anything that the SEC, anything that makes them look worse, I am all for. I pray on their downfall every single night before, with my children. I pray with Blakely and McKay and say, we pray that the SEC will collapse and that Greg Sankey will get put on a terror list because he is a domestic terrorist. But I thought the committee was wrong, and I thought Alabama deserved to be in. So, reconcile those two things. But yeah, Ward Manuel, terrible job. D+ on my list. So
D+.
That Liberty. Sorry, go ahead. An F, D+. Why not an F?
I think they did some good things. Good job putting Oregon number 1, being the only undefeated Power 5 team. Well done.
I could have done
that. Was good. You put forth some effort, so you're not getting an F, but you are getting a D+. You failed, but you didn't get like a 50. You got like a 64, or I guess what would that be? A 68.
Yeah, Z, I was going to say that Liberty Bowl must mean a lot more to you than we initially let on, because anything the SEC, Tech now has that opportunity. So I know you're praying hard for December 27th now for sure. Conrad, this is going to be and we'll join you in that too. Conrad, this is going to be interesting. Yeah, and in the comments, please, the comment below for the destruction of the SEC.
Tell us how you pray against the SEC.
So, okay, Conrad, I'm coming to you.
We're
now.
pro Big 12, anti-SEC.
Yes. Yep. One thing that was interesting to me, Conrad, about this whole thing is what the analyst said was, well, it would be a detriment to college football if they discredit a college conference champion loss. So like SMU's 11-1 gets in and lose. What was interesting is that SMU, Indiana, BYU, Notre Dame, some of these teams, they all relatively had the same strength of record, strength of schedule. They really didn't have any crazy good wins, and they had a loss or 2. Were you more surprised to see how they were like more protecting themselves of we can't diminish a conference champion, we need to put SMU in? Or were you more surprised at the fact that they kind of just chose to protect public perception over the 12 best teams? At least that's what it looks like.
I mean, we know that all year they've been trying to protect public perception. I mean, that's what they wanted to do the whole time. I mean, even talking about using the eye test as a pretty valuable metric. I mean, it's pretty clear that they do care about ratings more than anything possible. I mean, that's just what they care about. I don't think they really care about the best, 12 teams. I really do believe that Arizona State, if they would not have gone out there and played probably the best game of their entire season and absolutely walloped Iowa State, which Brennan and I had the opportunity to be there, and Clayton did as well. Shout out to Craig Ewald, fan listener of the show, and his fiance Brittany. So thanks for having us. It was fun to be there and to see an Arizona State in person, a team in person that absolutely got the 4 seed because of their performance. I don't think if they would have won that game by 2-3 points, we win that game. I mean, that they get that seeding. Even so, I'm still surprised that Boise State got in over them, but I shouldn't really be, because the committee committee has basically said over and over and over again, with only allowing in one Big 12 team, I think you can make the argument for more. I'm not saying that you necessarily should have put more in, but the committee has made the point time and time again that they do not view the Big 12 the same way that they view a la SEC, a la Big 10. Like they just don't. And so I'm not shocked at all that they tried to protect public perception and their own agenda, which I do think I'm not one to maybe I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but looking at what they've done the entire season, I don't think questioning their motives and even their integrity, quite honest, is totally off base. Brennan, do you agree, disagree there? Have anything to add on that front?
Yeah, I think to Zyler's point last year with the Florida State thing, it's like, what you did was you leave out an undefeated conference champion, and then the committee, like, people go nuclear on that. And you put in Alabama, who beat Georgia to go to the SEC championship, and that's fair. And then this year, it's like you are now saying, okay, if SMU loses to a top 20 team, but they worked and went 11-1 to get there, and then we're going to drop them 5 spots in a conference champion, what's essentially worse here? Like, they're put in the spot of what's worse?
That's a great point.
Losing the conference champion and like knocking them out to put in Bama because they have 3 wins, or putting in Bama because they have 3 wins against ranked teams, but also they lost, and then we can't really compare because they're not in the same conference. And this is where you're always going to run to this. I think after last year, remember, we were all saying like, okay, well, once they go to 12, like the drama will be gone. Well, there was more drama arguably this year based off the lack of like consistency within the committee compared to other years. Like at least with 4 teams, you had the TCU Baylor year, where you're like, what? Like you're going to put in Ohio State because of why? And you had the Florida State year and last year. And this one, it was just kind of like they almost laid their own bed. They put Miami in between the SEC teams. They put SMU at 8, which was just too much to drop. I think if SMU would have come out at like 10 or 11, it would have made way more sense for them to just drop them 2 spots after a loss, which they could have done. And they could have said, you haven't beat anybody yet. Just like Indiana's sitting there at 10. They could have put Indiana above SMU and they didn't. And so they chose to do that and then kind of lay the seed for the argument, because also if you known you were going to get here, you could have just put Bama at 12 and had Clemson replace him. But putting Bama at 11 and making people think, you could have said, hey, the 3-loss SEC teams, we are valuing their losses more than their wins. They were bad losses, and therefore we're going to put them at 13, 14, 15. It's who you win, not who you lose to. And it's more so like how you win consistently over the course of the season. And they didn't do that. That's most frustrating to me. And then, it's just not going to get any easier. Like next year, it's going to be the same thing. Honestly, one of my biggest pet peeves with this whole thing is they're going to seed the field. Like Arizona State is like the 12th seed, and that's next to their name.
Weird.
But because they won a conference champion, they get the 4th seed, but but next to their name, it's going to say 12. Like that just doesn't make sense. Boise's 9, but they're 3. Like Texas is.
It's so strange.
Texas is 3, but it's 5. And that's the other thing too. It's like Texas loses to Georgia twice, and I know people will hate this, but who did Texas
weakest SEC strength of schedule?
Is their best win A&M and Vanderbilt? Like, are those their best wins this year?
Florida. I mean, they beat Florida.
Florida, maybe. Okay, so 7-5 Florida, 6-6 Vanderbilt, and 8-4 A&M. It's not, and then they lost to Georgia twice, but they don't get punished for that. They drop 1 spot. They get to stay in the top 5 all year. So it's like you say the SEC's this, that, but they get Mississippi State, they get Arkansas, who lost to Oklahoma State and will lose to you in 3 weeks, hopefully. So there's just a ton of inconsistencies from 1 to 25. It just doesn't make a lot 100%. Of sense. And that's the most frustrating part. Yeah.
And it's
you have no idea what you have no idea what you need to do to make the playoff right now outside of winning your conference championship. You have no idea what they care about.
For a hypothetical,
you just have no idea. Sorry.
And thinking about it too, I mean, you're always the part of the problem was the people complained about the BCS because they felt like it was too rigid and too maybe predictable. And again, it was only 2 teams at that point, so it was a little bit different than the 4-team and now a 12-team college football playoff. But I'm not trying to maybe suggest anything here. I'm just saying, if you actually had clear metrics of what will get you in and an actual system to unbiasedly rank these different teams and take in all these things into account, maybe you'd have a more fair outcome for every team and not just Pro
Mhm.
1 conference. Because the reality is you're going to have people in that room who are supposed to be unbiased. But you're telling me that Ward Manuel didn't have a bias? People always have biases. People always want
Yeah.
you to do what they want you to do, or people always want this outcome for a specific motive, a specific reason. When you have people in a room together making decisions,
Mhm.
that's always going to happen. You can try and make it as unbiased as you want, but the only unbiased way you're actually going to get the best 12 teams is to have an algorithm, to have a computer decide that doesn't have biases. Now, again, humans build computers, so that's a whole different thing. Maybe you should just have somebody, on the other side of the world, build one so that there's no Ohio State, SEC, Florida, Texas, all this biases. I mean, if you could just do that and make it actually objective and not subjective like it was with the 4 team and how now obviously how it is with the 12 team, then you may actually have some,
Yeah.
equality
But
across the sport. But right now you just don't.
It's just not going to work though, because in college football has always had this problem. I mean, they had newspapers, they had people just say we're a champion during World War II.
Yeah.
It's like you've had national champions just
The
called
Aggies.
by school. Yeah, i.e. the Aggies.
UCF.
You've had UCF. You've had
That was legitimate.
You've had newspapers call it. You've had the BCS era. You've had just kind of one bowl signified the championship game, and they just said we won the national title game because we beat blah blah in the Orange Bowl in 1974. So like college football has never had a consistent system, but you can't. I think what this has taught me is you almost can't, because you have too many schools across the country and too many conferences. It's not the NFL. And I had a friend bring this up to me. It's like if they put the Big Ten and SEC into a pool of 32 teams and did NIL and salary caps and stuff, and all you're really doing is creating a minor NFL system, why would I watch that? Like you're taking away, that'd be like watching minor league baseball, in my opinion. Like if you're going to try to turn it into some NIL, just the top 32 teams, and then how do you judge who those 32 teams are? Like, is Vanderbilt really better than Texas Tech? So like, there's really no way to measure this system anyways, unless you just put the field almost to anybody. Like, Mike Leach this and do 64 teams. Like, I just don't know if we're ever going to come up to a legit solution, because you can't, it's just not possible to measure Texas Tech compared to, Alabama. There's no way to do it.
Yeah.
And you can only control who you play on your schedule. That's where I give Indiana and SMU the benefit of the doubt. It's like, is it their fault that the Big Ten scheduled their season and they went 11-1? But you're saying because they didn't play Mizzou or South Carolina, they're not deserving? Like, I get it. I get the strength of record metric, but they can't control that. And you can't take away people from the opportunity to play in that either. So it's really frustrating. I don't know. Like, okay, hypothetical as we close the show. Let's say Texas Tech, let's subtract a loss from everyone in the Big 12. So let's say Texas Tech beat Baylor and TCU for this, and you're 10-2 and you're 7-1 in conference, and you've got like 4 ranked wins. Or no, let's say you're 11-1. Let's say the Big 12 has 3 11-1 teams, but you've only beat 2 ranked teams. You're Texas Tech. Like, are you getting in? Or like, if you're Indiana, essentially, as Texas Tech, are you in? Probably not.
No.
So here's the other thing. You have a data point problem, because Tech played 3 games against teams that were not in the Big 12 conference this year. So did everybody else. Those are the only data points you have to measure your conference against other teams. It's different in college basketball, where you get 30 plus to 40 plus games where you can kind of see, okay, I have a really good idea metrically, like who is good and who is not. There's really no way to solve that problem, without expanding the non-conference games that you play. And if anything, the SEC and Big Ten are going to go away from that. They're going to play they're going to play 9 conference games or something like that. There's that problem will not be getting solved. And Brennan, I think your point was extremely well founded. There's just not a great way to do this. I wish they had something like college basketball where you had a dedicated team sheet, and it's because I know when the committee is looking at it, they are looking at strength of record, they're looking at KPI, they're looking at Bart Torvik, they're looking at KenPom, they're looking at all your Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 wins. Like, I know those are the things that they look at, and I can look at team A and team B, and I can clearly tell you this is what matters. Because these are proven, they're tried and true metrics. There's both, quantitative metrics, how many wins do you have in these categories, but also qualitative, like how well are you beating these teams? That matters. Losing to Oregon, to Boise State's credit, by 3 is impressive. That should count for something. That shouldn't be the entirety of your resume. When we look at the NCAA tournament seeding, your wins will get you in. How you win your games and how you perform in your losses is what gets you seeded. That is not the way that the committee does it right now. And it's hard because there's only 12 and for some teams 13 data points. That is very hard. You have one really outlier performance. How do you look at that? The BYU versus SMU game, was that just a fluke? Or why isn't BYU? There's just so many.
Yeah.
It's just not a well-constructed system. It's not well-constructed, and it's not well-executed to be served on the future. And to your point, the auto buy thing, I love what they try to do at the conference championships, but it just looks weird. Like, it's just very strange. I wish they would get away with that.
Agreed.
Or if you do have that, you need to reseed after the first round so that if the 12 seed wins, they should be playing, the number 1 seed or however that works. Like reseed after the first round so that it's equitable, not that there's this really wonky path for a team to kind of waltz through, because somebody's going to get to play Boise State as a 3 seed. And that's like an unfair path if you are, let's say, Oregon, who may, or, who's the 2 seed? It's
Georgia.
Georgia's going to have to deal with, Conrad, I don't know if you have the bracket, but somebody gets the winner of Ohio State, Tennessee, and then somebody gets the winner of Penn State, SMU. The two of those, one of those things is not like the other.
Right.
And so I wish they would reseed, because that's just not, like, if SMU wins, they will be favored to make the semifinal. They will be favored over Boise State almost unequivocally. Georgia gets Indiana versus Notre Dame, whereas, congrats, Oregon, you were the 1 seed. You get potentially Ohio State, maybe the 4th best team in the country. Like, they need to reseed after the first round, because Oregon gets kind of screwed by having the 1 seed. They would much rather be the 3 seed.
Yeah.
It's almost like what they did doesn't really matter nearly as much. If you're watching on YouTube and you're still with us, we do have the bracket up on the screen. So Arizona State gets the winner of Clemson and Texas, and then Oregon gets the winner, like Zyler mentioned, of Tennessee, Ohio State. Boise State gets the winner of SMU and Penn State, and then Indiana and Notre Dame play for the right to face Georgia. So that's kind of how it's sitting right now. And we'll be tracking along with this on the Broadway Shuffle just to see how it plays out, because we do care about college football. We do think it's great, and we are entertained. We are excited to see what this looks like, but at the end of the day, you do see some serious problems with this on its merits as well.
Yeah, if I'm Oregon right now, I would trade spots with Texas if I could, so that I can play Clemson and then I get to play Arizona State instead of having to deal with Ohio State or Tennessee.
For sure. Yeah. It's going to be crazy to follow and what happens over the course of the next year. And with conferences, I imagine this will only be a 1-year thing in terms of these seeds. I think they'll probably get this solved, because that's almost universal. Like, this makes no sense. It's dumb. Let's get this fixed. But in terms of, are you adding more teams? How you guarantee that some of these arguments don't happen again next year? It's always going to happen. If you had 80 teams, the 81st, 82nd, 83rd teams, you'd find a way to debate them. So there's always going to be something going on, but it just still feels like, we tried another way and it still feels like a flawed system. And for whatever reason, this sport just can't get it right, where you have like the NCAA basketball and it's the most perfect system in the world because it's just the most fun thing to watch. Though the best team might not win every year, you just get the most exciting 2 weeks of sports you could probably ask for. So it's just weird to kind of have the opposite when it comes to a football system. But we'll see what happens, man. We'll be here to cover it all over the next course of the holiday season. And Z, let's go ahead and close the show with another tech trivia question, and then I'll let people know where they can find us and what we got coming up.
Yeah, you've played the University of Arkansas 36 times, originating with the first game November 23rd, 1957. That was a great shout out earlier in the episode, Brennan. Do you have any idea how many wins we have against Arkansas currently in the course of our storied Southwestern Conference history?
Ooh, that's a good one.
You've played 36 games.
Are we? I'm going to say it's 19-17 Texas Tech.
I like that. Conrad?
It's so hard. I think they have more wins than you. I don't know what the number is, though. I'm not going to give it a number. I'm just going to say I think Arkansas has more wins than you. It wouldn't shock me if it was 5 or more that they have over you.
Yeah, the series history is actually 8-28. They have absolutely dominated you. You only have 8 wins against Arkansas in your history.
It's embarrassing.
So I was excited to do this trivia, and then I looked at the answer, and I was like, oh my gosh, you have absolutely gotten cooked. But you did win your last game against Arkansas in Fayetteville, 35-24. So
with the GOAT, Patrick Mahomes on your squad.
It's been 9 years since they've beaten you. Think about that. They've had to live with that. They've had to sit with Texas Tech having that win over them. It's got to be eating them up. I bet they're just itching to play us.
They're itching, man. They
sure
can't
they are.
wait. So, well, it'll be fun, and we'll be here every Monday and Thursday over the course of the rest of the year. We will have some changes depending on some basketball games on Wednesdays and Sundays. So be on the lookout when we do drop new episodes, but we will be here multiple times a week for you guys. And feel free to like this video, subscribe to the channel. It does help our base and help our growth, but we're excited for some things. We will have some interviews coming up as well. Athletes, administration, coaches. We've got some stuff in the works. So just be on the lookout for that. Those episodes might drop some Wednesdays or Fridays, depending on when we get the interview completed. But we want to make sure that this is a channel for you to come to for Discord community, and then also to get some experiences from some people within Texas Tech athletics that you wouldn't hear anywhere else. So for Conrad, Zyler, I'm Brennan. We look forward to seeing you guys next time around, and Reckham Tech, and we will see you guys on Thursday.